Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone for the 27th of October 2012. Richard Saunders here with you from the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, California. Look out for the odd earthquake here and there. On this week's show, get off to a slightly somber note with the reports of the death of Paul Kurtz and James Durand. Two giants in the skeptical field, one from the United States and one in Australia. So shortly I shall read the statements as posted at the Australian Skeptics website. And just as an aside, in the year 2000, when I had attended the third Skeptics Convention, the Third World Skeptics Convention, as it was called, I think, as a nobody, complete nobody, just some guy off the street who bought my ticket and went along. During one of the luncheon intervals, I sat at a table in a canteen all by myself, eating a sandwich or something, when Paul Kurtz called me over to his table just to talk to me. Now, I wasn't sure who Paul Kurtz was at that stage, but he saw me sitting by myself and just called me over to say, "Hello, who are you? Are you enjoying the convention?" Charming fellow. Anyway, it's a pity that the giants, our pioneering giants, have left the stage, or some of them anyway. After those tributes coming up shortly to Paul Kurtz and James Durand, we hear from Adam van Langenberg down in Melbourne, who tells us about his adventures visiting a psychic expo, the Cheltenham Psychic Expo with Adam van Langenberg. And after his report, I catch up with Adam to discuss the Psychic Expo even further. Following that, it's back to Las Vegas with Maynard. Maynard catches up with David Gorski, Dr. David Gorski, and Dr. Martha Keller. Now these interviews that Maynard's been doing from the amazing meeting earlier in the year, it's like a bottomless pit. Every time I think, okay, we're getting to the end of these interviews, I find more. It's just ridiculous. You have no idea. It was just, I think Maynard was really just a blur at TAM. It was just incredible to see him running around interviewing everybody. I think he was outside even interviewing the local wildlife at one stage. And to round off the show, I catch up with a sponsor, one of the generous sponsors to the Skeptic Zone, Glenn Jackson, for a little chat here in a coffee shop not far from San Francisco. A little bit more from me at the end of the show, but now sit back, have some donut shop coffee, and listen to the Skeptic Zone. Skeptic pioneer Paul Kurtz dead. Published on Friday, October the 26th, 2012 at www.skeptics.com.au. Professor Paul Kurtz, co-founder of the original skeptical organization, the Committee for Scientific Investigations of Claims of the Paranormal, SciCoP, died on October 20, 2012. He was 86. Kurtz was Professor Emeritus of Philosophy at the State University of New York at Buffalo, and over his long career published over 800 articles or reviews and authored and edited over 50 books. He has been called the father of secular humanism. In 1969 he founded the publishing house Prometheus Books, which specializes in humanist and skeptical publications. Kurtz visited Australia on 2 occasions. During the first, he attended the Australian Skeptics Convention in Melbourne in 1986, then visited an outback site to view Halley's Comet. His second visit was to jointly sponsor the 2000 World Skeptics Convention in Sydney, where he presented a Distinguished Skeptic Award to longtime editor of The Skeptic, the magazine from Australia, Barry Williams. In conversation with Barry, Kurtz paid Australian skeptics the compliment that of all the skeptical functions he had attended, this was the one that most emphasized how much enjoyment could be had from organized skepticism. noting that he had never hitherto heard so much laughter at such a gathering. While Kurt's period at the helm of various skeptical and humanist groups was not without some differences of opinion, in an interview with The Skeptic earlier this year, Ray Hyman, another pioneer in the establishment of the skeptical movement, praised Kurt's organizational skills in setting up the original Psychop, suggesting those skills were essential to the birth of the movement. For this role and his continued championing of the skeptical approach throughout his life, he will be fondly and gratefully remembered by skeptics for many years. James Durand, another skeptic pioneer, dies. Published on Sunday, October the 28th, 2012, at www.skeptics.com.au. James Jerry Durand, co-founder of Australian Skeptics, died on October 12th, aged 93. Durand played a fundamental role in the setting up and the ongoing activities of Australian Skeptics. The initial meeting to establish the Skeptics were held in 1980 at his home in Hawthorne, Melbourne, with lawyer Mark Plummer, who became the group's founding president. Plummer died last year. Durand had previously spent 6 years working for the United Nations agency ICAO in Montreal. Durand and Plummer had known each other as colleagues in the early 1970s, when Plummer was the industrial officer for the Professional Officers Association, the union representing scientists, engineers, and other professionals in the Commonwealth Public Service. And Durand was an honorary editor-in-chief of the same group's monthly journal. In his day job, Durand was the superintending airways engineer for the Victorian and Tasmanian region in the development of civil aviation. His son, Dr. Peter Durand, reports that, having decided to create the Australian Skeptics, inspired what they had learnt from the US organisation, Psychop, James and Mark approached Philip Adams, who readily and enthusiastically supported the new organisation and created national publicity for it, so much so that James and Mark were always ready to include Philip as the third co-founder of Australian Skeptics. It was Philip Adams who had the bright idea of enlisting Dick Smith's sponsorship of a prize of $10,000 for the first person who could convince a panel of scientific experts that their water divining would work. This was the first stage in what is now the Australian Skeptics' $100,000 challenge. Durand was a founding secretary of the Skeptics and produced the Skeptics newsletter and wrote many of its articles from its first issue in 1981 until March 1983. He was also active as National Secretary of the Australian Humanists, and in overlapping periods was the editor for the journals of the Australian Humanists and the Australian Rationalists. His background in aviation led, amongst other things, to a series of important investigative articles on the famous Valentich UFO case. He will always be recognised as a key figure in the establishment of the Skeptics, and whose efforts and scientific approach allowed the group to grow both in size and influence.
This is Adam van Langenberg from SkepticSchool.com with a report on how I spent my weekend called Cheltenham Psychic Expo, the bad, the ugly, and the really ugly. On the weekend, I was unexpectedly driving up the Nepean Highway in Cheltenham due to a surprise invitation to lunch by some friends. At a very specific moment of my journey, I happened by chance alone to turn my head to the right and noticed a sign proudly claiming Psychic Expo. Clearly, this was no coincidence. In fact, one of the vendors inside told me that to my face. At a $5 entry, I figured, why not? It'd be a good way to kill a couple of hours on a Sunday afternoon and possibly learn a little bit more about what these chaps were up to. The event was held in the Kingston City Hall and was not particularly busy. There were around 15 vendors inside and possibly 30 visitors. More came in over the 2 hours I spent there, but I don't think they would have had more than 100 or so altogether. I've ranked them from what I think were the least to most harmful. A couple were fairly innocent, just a bit silly. Others angered me to the point of contacting the city council and asking them why they allowed such people to sell their wares in an official city building. The bad. A very nice lady was selling some very nice children's books full of positive messages such as "I love family" and "I love breathing." She told me how thinking "I love my body" could really help, and I asked her if she meant that I could stop going to the gym. She said no, just that being positive about it meant that I would be more likely to take care of it. She was definitely the least kooky of the bunch. Only slightly more kooky was the lady selling the Himalayan salt lamps. Apparently they emit negative ions, which counteract the harmful positive ions produced by electronic devices in your home. I asked how big a lamp I would need to balance my 48-inch TV, and I was told to go by feeling, not size. She suggested at least one in each room, especially children's bedrooms. I commented on the irony of the fact that the lamps contained positive ion-emitting light bulbs, but she said they don't. They just heat the salt, which is what makes them work. More bizarre were the heart-shaped salt rocks labelled angel poo. Apparently angels defecate in the shape of a heart. Who knew? Ultimately, I didn't find these terribly bad. The science behind her claims is non-existent, but at least she wasn't making any real health claims. Also, the lamps were quite pretty, so I can't fault her aesthetics. The ugly. Most of the tables were for the fortune tellers. All of them had tarot cards, but a couple also claimed to be able to communicate with the spirits. What are spirits? I asked. They're just dead people, basically. Yeah, they're dead people. Gotcha. One said she might be able to contact my father, who is alive and well in Hillsville, but couldn't make any guarantees. They're still people, so who knows what they're up to. Prices varied from $20 to $30 for 15 minutes and up to $45 for a half hour. I decided to give the cheapest tarot reader a go, and this is where I learned my first lesson. You get what you pay for. I spent the reading looking for cold reading techniques and trying my best not to give away any information through my body language. I needn't have bothered, as she didn't look up from the cards once. She had me shuffle and deal out 11 cards onto her green velvet-draped table, which were then arranged in some sort of pattern. I was told that I'm very organised, which I'm not, and that there would be a lot of retrenchments at my business. I'm a teacher. And I would rise to a leadership position within the next 6 months. No chance in hell. My 3-year-old daughter, I have no children, was very wise for her age, and that my wife and I don't see each other as much as we'd like to. We're both teachers and see each other too much, at least according to my wife. I did notice a couple of cold reading techniques coming out. I'm fairly convinced that she wasn't aware she was using them, or at least wasn't doing anything deceitful. She clearly seemed to believe in what she was doing. Psychic. You are very organised. Me. No, I'm not. Psychic. Well, you could learn. See what she did there? She turned her miss into a hit. Of course I could learn to be more organised. Pretty much anybody could. You're a ballerina. No, I'm not. Well, you could take lessons. I asked her to tell me about my family, and she dealt out some cards, one of which was the 2 of Pentacles. Psychic. Do you have 2 children? Me. No, I have 1 daughter. Psychic. Well, it must mean your wife and daughter. Another miss turned into a hit. The 3rd time I noticed it was when she turned a miss into a hit by telling me that I was wrong and she was right. Psychic. Is your daughter an earth sign? Me. No, she's a Sagittarius. Psychic. Well, she has a lot of earth sign characteristics. One of my students pointed out that she was essentially saying that I couldn't trust astrology. Anybody could be anything. $20 later, I looked around for something else to do. The really ugly. More disturbing than most was the representative from a cult known as Akanka, who taught me a magic word that could be used to communicate with God and reveal my past lives. The word is hue. This will open your body, or your soul, they're essentially the same thing, and then you chant mana. He spent a lot of time trying to give me free books and pamphlets and encouraging me to attend their fortnightly chanting sessions. Of course, he was very friendly and open, but cult recruiters generally tend to be. Not so encouraging was the Scientology man. I spent around 20 minutes with him learning about them and what they do. He showed me a booklet containing an emotional scale known as a tone scale. 1.5 is anger, 2.5 is boredom, 3.5 is cheerful, and so on. Apparently everybody has a base level which they'll revert to. A person whose base level is 1.5 will generally be angry all the time. They may feel more positive emotions from time to time, but will eventually default back to anger. I took an e-meter stress test to see how I was doing, and apparently I'm a 3.45, quite cheerful. This pleased me no end. The fact that I could make the little needle on the machine jump around by moving the handles was irrelevant, I suppose. What hurt my feelings was that he made absolutely no attempt to recruit me. He didn't tell me where they met. He didn't try to sell me a book or DVD. He didn't tell me how much better my life would be if I joined them. Am I not special enough? Could he sense my lack of riches? Was my slack-jawed yokel impression not good enough to mask my cunning intellect? I felt like writing Tom Cruise a letter to complain. It was actually a lot of fun pretending to be completely ignorant because these people were falling over themselves to get their message out there. No question was too stupid for them to answer. I did feel very welcome there, and I see that as a real danger. It would be a very tempting place for somebody who was feeling lost or alone. Even worse than the cults, in my opinion anyway, were the alternative medicine peddlers. One lady told me that she could reverse type 2 diabetes through diet and twice-yearly detoxes. She couldn't use the word cure due to legal reasons, but had cleverly discovered that saying reverse meant the same thing and didn't incur the wrath of the Diabetes Foundation. The stall that really upset me was run by a lady who sold magical rocks. No, wait, they weren't magical. Actually, nothing at the entire expo was magical. They were all 100% scientific. These scientific rocks grew in the earth and contained minerals. We contain minerals. Therefore, these rocks can help us by giving out powerful emotions. She had bowls full of beautiful little stones, all shiny and polished and in varied hues and colours. Each one has a different effect, such as tektite, which is as follows. Tektite is a meteorite and is believed to enhance connection to other worlds. It delves deep into the heart of a situation so you see the cause and effect. It creates biomagnetic energy around the body, signifies spiritual change and development. It can be buried near your front door to guard against fire, storm, hostility, and to attract abundance. It is too powerful to use on children and animals. It reduces fever, aids circulation, and prevents transmission of diseases, skin disorders, and illnesses that drain strength. Worried about the spread of HIV in Africa and the fact that the Catholic Church tells people that condoms are evil? No problem, just give them a small piece of tektite. Sick of replacing your smoke detector batteries? Just bury one by your front door and you'll be fine. But that's not even the bad part. She mentioned using one for her son who suffers from migraines. One placed under his pillow at night fixes them right up. I asked her what else her rocks could cure, and she dropped the big C right on me. Cancer. Cancer is nothing more than repressed emotion, apparently. And what is the cure for repressed emotion? Amethyst. Carried with you, worn as jewellery, or placed under your pillow at night time won't just prevent cancer, but completely cure it. I agree that repressing your emotions isn't healthy, but it sure doesn't cause cancer. As funny as I found some of the exhibitors, such as one charging $80 for a badly drawn picture of a guardian angel, I can't find a single thing to laugh about here. Even one person taking her advice over a doctor's would be one too many. How would you feel if somebody close to you abandoned their medical treatment for a magic rock? I do understand that desire. Cancer treatment is no picnic, and I don't think we can blame people for wanting an easier, less scary option. What we can do is blame the people pushing these decisions, They are taking advantage of people's fear and weakness and turning it into a profit. I'm not going to call this person a con artist because I think they believe in what they are doing. That still does not excuse the fact that an untrained individual is giving out very serious, very flawed, and very dangerous medical advice. Given that this event was held in the Kingston City Hall, I've written to the council expressing my anger and concern. Finding people making unsupported medical claims and 2 cults operating out of an official city building is not the type of thing I expect. I have no doubt they will respond with something along the lines of, "It is not up to us to monitor every stall holder and people have the right to express their opinions, yada yada yada." I hope I'm wrong.
And joining me now from Melbourne is Adam van Langenberg himself. Hello, Adam.
Hi Richard, how are you going?
I'm doing really well. I'm having a great time here in California. I love visiting California from time to time, but I was so interested to read and now just hear your report about the Mind Body Spirit type festival you go to, and my listeners know well that I love going to these mind body things, or mind body wallet, of course, as we call them. And I was really tickled to know that was your first experience at a mind body wallet. It must have been quite breathtaking in a way.
It was a little bit of an eye opener for me. I honestly had no idea what to expect. I didn't know if I was going to be going into a massive tent full of hippies trying to breathe incense into my face or anything like that, or if it was just going to be a few, depressed looking tables set up around a largely empty hall.
Well, I've seen them both. I've seen huge halls filled with this sort of thing. On one end of the scale. On the other end, I have been in somewhere like a town hall with about 4 tables set up, and that can be quite depressing.
Yeah, you actually start to feel sorry for them a little bit.
Well, I guess you, I guess you do in a kind of a way. Now, do you think the people at the one you went to, do you think they were looking entertained and optimistic, or were they a little bit, a little bit nonplussed by it, or maybe a little bit heartbroken?
There was a bit of a mix. Some people there were very positive and happy and quite eager, and some people were just, sitting back on their chairs waiting to be approached. There were probably about 20 tables, also, I think, and about half of them were tarot readers, and they were just sitting there waiting for people to come up and purchase 30 minutes of their time.
Yeah, I've certainly seen that sort of thing before, tarot readers, and then you'll get the face readers and the astrologers and whatever. But I find tarot reading quite interesting because it seems that the majority of psychics at psychic fairs in the psychic room or whatever, they're tarot readers. And I think part of the reason for this is that it's one of the easier methods to do, simply because you've got all these helps in front of you. You've got all these cards that you put down a card, and especially if they're picture cards, if there's colourful tarot with people doing things on them, you can just say a story straight away involving the pictures you're seeing in front of you, and of course the sitter will take from that what they will, I guess.
Leigh. I agree. A few years ago, I got myself a book on tarot reading, and I thought, I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to learn how to do it and see what it's like. And I found it remarkably easy. All you need is a little bit of an imagination and, a half-decent memory to sort of know what you should be talking about. As a maths teacher, I'm always on the lookout for numerologists. So I was hoping that there'd be somebody there that would be taking the numbers of my birthday and adding and multiplying them together, so at least I could get involved in that. But haven't seen one of those yet, unfortunately.
Now, I guess now you may feel the same way I do. I mean, I've been going to these things for years and years and years, that it is a worthwhile endeavour for any skeptic to go along to these things and ask questions.
I learned so much from doing this. I'm really glad that I ended up, just spur of the moment deciding to go and do it. And it was really interesting. I think I mentioned some of the things in there were quite funny, and some of the things in there were, quite upsetting at the same time. So it was interesting for that. Also for me as well, just to see what things did make me annoyed and what things was I sort of willing to say, oh, that's not too bad. I won't worry about that one too much.
Well, I think that you now would probably, your appetite would be whetted to go to the major one in Melbourne, which is once or twice a year. I know it's twice a year in Sydney. I think it may be once or twice a year in Melbourne, which is the Festival of Mind, Body, Spirit. This is the big one in one of the big convention halls. And that will knock your socks off. I mean, there are healers and tarot card readers and astrologers and New Age mystics and all sorts of... That's one of the places where I first came across the power band type bands, of course. But strangely enough, mixed in with all these bizarre things, you can often find some really good stuff, like some wonderful type food and hot sauces and genuinely good products to help you relax or something like that. So it's a really interesting adventure.
Well, there were some. There was a clothing store there, which I didn't mention. Just tie-dye T-shirts and hemp trousers, I guess, that type of thing. And the salt lamps, as I mentioned, they were quite nice. So, I mean, that was one thing I could actually visualize, or you could actually imagine buying, just for the fact that it looked quite pretty.
Well, Adam, good on you for going along. Thank you for the report, which I found very interesting indeed. And as ever, I say to the people listening to this, if there's a mind, body, spirit near you, make an effort and go along. And look at it this way. The money you pay to get in goes towards your education of being a skeptic, because unless you just want to sit in your chair and read what the computer says, the best thing to do is to get out there and see it for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, it was a real eye-opener for me.
Thank you, Adam, very much. And it's not long now before we meet up in person for the Australian Skeptics National Convention at the end of November. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. I am very excited. Cannot wait for that.
Adam Van Langenberg, thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard.
This is Carrie Poppy.
I'm Ross Blotcher.
Oh, hey, Ross.
Hey, we're from a podcast called
Oh No, Ross and Carrie.
We find out what happens when you show up and ask questions.
We've hung out with the Kabbalists.
The Mormons.
We've gone and gotten ear candles.
Gone to the Sikhs.
We show up so you don't have to.
So find out where we're going next.
We'll even have special episodes where we have famous guests like Brian Dalton from Mr. Deity.
You heard that awesome theme music? He wrote that.
You should come visit us at onopodcast.com or
facebook.com/onrack.
What the hell's OnRack, Ross?
ONRAC.
Oh no, Ross and Carrie.
That's our show.
That's so smart. Come join us.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Oh, well, I've just been in the workshop all about Dr. Google and all the wonderful information and misinformation you can find online. And one of the interesting bits of the talk was Dr. David Gorski.
Hello.
And what is your field?
I'm a cancer surgeon. I do mostly breast cancer surgery.
And how many years have you been in the industry, so to speak?
Well, I started practice in 1999. So before that, there was the years of training that go into
And why oncology? Why that?
I don't know. Cancer always just fascinated me. I mean, I do research in cancer. I do clinical practice, and it's a very difficult and unfortunately fascinating disease.
Yeah, it's tragic, yet there's hope there. But all the time on the news, I thought cancer would be almost completely cured by all the news reports I see. So every other week, it's cured.
Well, yes. I mean...
And that's the problem. That's what you were talking about.
I mean, we actually do... certain cancers we do very well with. I mean, breast cancer, for instance, is one of those. However, there are cancers we don't do very well with, like pancreatic cancer and esophageal cancer. So, you know, it's a mixed... You know, cancer isn't just one disease. There's it's hundreds of diseases, some of which we can actually cure, some of which we really can't, or we have a really hard time.
So, as a doctor, you must be faced with patients coming to you in the office and they have an unreasonable expectation, or they've read about some preliminary tests that look good which can't be applied to them. Does that happen often? That must be kind of heartbreaking when these people come in and think there's a cure.
It happens sometimes. One of the good things about being a breast cancer surgeon is most of the patients that I see are potentially curable. So, they will, they wouldn't be coming to see me for the most part if surgery weren't a possible cure, weren't possible to cure them, or at least if they weren't at least potential candidates.
And what is the most annoying thing on the internet as a professional trained for years in your field? You see lots of stuff on the net. There was a few examples you put up there. What's the one that really makes you shake your fist at your screen?
I don't know if I can narrow it down to just one. It's
maybe a genre.
There's a lot of the cancer cure testimonials that sound, that suck in cancer patients are just really frustrating because, people believe them and people get sucked in. For instance, Robert Young, as ridiculous as he is, has gotten quite a few people to believe him. Like Kim Tinkham, who I talked about, is one of them. She's not the only one. So it's those are the really frustrating ones. And it's hard to explain. This stuff isn't working, and a lot of times. Like I said, it was the surgery that actually cured someone, and they say, oh, the alternative medicine cured me. For most breast cancer, surgery is the primary treatment, but the chemotherapy and the radiation decrease the chance of it coming back, right? So you can, in the days before there was radiation and chemotherapy, all we did was surgery. But after the chemotherapy and the radiation made our surgery better, gave us better results. So you can still be cured with just surgery in many cases.
Do you think it's a kind of a strange result that people will discount all your years of training and experience because of your training and experience, because you're part of the medical industrial complex?
I don't know.
So that you'll get people that mistrust doctors for some reason because they're doctors, and then they'll go on a website from someone who's not a doctor and trust them because they're not a doctor. Isn't that kind of odd?
There is a lot of distrust of doctors. There has been for a long time, but I can't explain it. There's always been kind of a,
Who do you think started this? Was it dentists maybe trying to get their own back?
Oh, I don't know about that. I'm not sure who started it. There have always been, like quacks or whatever you want to call them, but scientific medicine is actually a fairly new development. It's really only been in the last maybe 100 years, 150 years at the most, that science has really been the major basis of medicine. So it's we're still kind of in our infancy if you look at the history of medicine before that.
I saw during your talk there the spelling of disease in a way I have never seen it spelled before, and you said if it's spelled like that on a website, run away. Could you explain that?
It's a pretty good indication of quackery if you see it, because they will say that you don't have disease, you have dis-ease, and apparently someone came up to me, and I didn't even know this. Someone came up to me afterward and said that it originated with Christian Science. But I've seen it in way more, quack websites than just Christian Science. In fact, I don't even know if I ever saw it in Christian Science.
So would that be the one big red flag we can take away from it? Is if you see dis-ease, or is there something else?
That's a pretty reliable one, yes.
If they're not spelling the word that you've got wrong, you're in trouble.
That one's a pretty good. Yeah, that one's a pretty good indication, but it's not as common as a lot of the other ones, so it's not, you frequently don't see it,
And of course, is there anything you get into? Do you like taking more vitamins you should? Is there any woo you are susceptible to, despite all your training? Do you not walk under a ladder? Do you don't like if a black cat walks in front of you?
No, everybody's human, and you can't think of, I don't know that there is specifically, although I suspect, like, saying something optimistic like everything's going to be okay automatically makes me think I should knock on wood or something, you know.
Well, look, I'll go do some knocking on wood. It was great to see you talk, and I've certainly learnt a few websites not to go to.
All right, thank you very much. It was good talking to you.
No, I want to know what you thought of the talk in there about Dr. Google.
Actually, I was in the talk on the other side, so I missed this one. It was on grassroots skepticism, so how to grow the grassroots.
And so are you thinking of starting your own movement in your area?
We actually just started a couple in Florida, so it was more how to build our groups, make them bigger, reach more people.
So when you come to TAM, something like this, is it easier to get an idea of what's going on because you're suddenly talking to a whole bunch of like-minded people, I guess?
Oh, yeah, no, that's perfect. Actually, this is my wife.
I believe you're starting a grassroots movement.
Maynard.
That's what I was saying. I didn't recognize him when he walked by, and then he started talking, and I was like, whoa.
So what did you learn from the Dr. Google talk?
It was a really good talk about learning the difference between what's a fake website, what's a real website in terms of medical claims.
And did you know anything you didn't know before you went in, or did it just clarify stuff for you?
I think it more clarified stuff because that's the field that I'm in. So it was just good to hear a different aspect from a human perspective. I'm on the animal side.
And what's the word that annoys you the most? Is it homeopathy for animals?
Anything that's for animals. Homeopathy, chiropractic, energy healing, acupuncture.
What about psychic readings of animals? I love it. The people that can do psychic readings of cats.
Those don't hurt the cats.
That's true.
That's not a health risk, so...
Yeah, that's true, I guess, yeah. So you're a veterinarian?
Yes.
Right. So have you ever had to, stop someone from doing any of these strange practices and intervene?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I have clients sometimes that will ask me, they've received a treatment from another vet, and they'll ask me, do you think this works? And I'll tell them straight out, no, I don't think it works, and I'll tell them why.
Oh. And what is the really obvious one, the really expensive one that you see the most?
Acupuncture.
But as far as I know, I've never even seen meridians on a cat.
Well, you will on Sunday when I present a paper on it.
Wow, okay. And also, cats aren't known for their putting up with it-ness. I mean, you stick a pin in a cat, it's not going to be happy.
You'd be surprised.
Really?
Yeah. I've got pictures.
Wow, okay. Well, I'll certainly be looking forward to that chart.
Hi, this is Brian Dunning. Great news from the Skeptoid podcast. The fourth book, Astronauts, Aliens, and Ape Men, is now available. This book gives you the tools to sort the solid from the silly and answer such questions as, did Stalin actually try to create an army of half-ape, half-man super soldiers? Were the Apollo astronauts followed by a UFO all the way to the moon? Was Mozart really murdered by Antonio Salieri? Is there such a thing as ball lightning? Can martial arts masters kill without touching? Is an alien buried in the local cemetery in Aurora, Texas? Just search Amazon.com or come to Skeptoid.com/books to get your paperback copy today. It's also available for your Kindle, Nook, or iBooks for just $5. Astronauts, Aliens, and Ape Men. It's the perfect gift for that woo-woo friend of yours who doesn't listen to podcasts. Also,
I see all, big and small. I see everything you do, and I'm going to make sure everyone sees too.
The Secret of the Gypsy Queen, the musical fairy tale from Skeptoid episode number 300, is now available as a fully illustrated children's paperback. Artwork by Jesse Horn. It's the tale of a little girl who saves her kingdom when she is the only one who doesn't buy into the pop pseudoscience of the day. It's a wonderful, positive story that teaches children the value of skepticism. Lots of fun to read and look at the pictures while listening to the musical. The Secret of the Gypsy Queen is also available at Skeptoid.com/books. Every library should have one. This is Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com. And remember, you should always be skeptical.
Because the Uber scarfs are con.
Now, folks, you often hear me saying how great it is that when we get people, listeners like yourselves, helping to further the aims of the Skeptic Zone, whether it's getting Mad Maynard around the country or overseas, or even helping out with various projects like the Vaccination Chronicles, the new documentary I'm working on. And I'm delighted to meet one of the people who've been very generous. I'm here in Orinda, in California, in a little coffee shop, as you can hear in the background, to meet up with Glenn Jackson. Hello, Glenn.
Hello, Richard.
Now, I'm so delighted to meet up with you, and we've got this very small window of opportunity because you're off to the UK this afternoon. I just flew in yesterday, so it's very good that we can meet up. But it's nice to see you, to thank you personally for chipping in and helping out with the various Skeptic Zone endeavors.
You're entirely welcome. And thank you for bringing the magazine. I'll look forward to becoming a subscriber.
Ah, yes, the latest episode of The Skeptic, and I think there are 2 articles in there by me, so more torture for you. And I'm so glad to know that you get a lot out of podcasts in general, would you say?
I get a lot out of podcasts. I probably have 50 podcasts that I receive. I listen to them when I work out. And I'm just about to do that, as you can see from my attire.
Yes,
I'm sure you can see that on the podcast.
You look like you're just about to run up a hill. In fact.
I am about to run up a hill, and I do listen to podcasts when I do that, or as I lay in bed at night and wake up in the middle of the night and listen to the latest of the Skeptic Zone.
Yes. Well, that's very good to know. I'll bear that in mind next time I'm putting this show together or the next show together. Yeah. And it was so great because of your help, of course. Our listeners have been enjoying reports from the amazing meeting with Maynard for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks now. Yep. And he wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the support of people like you. So I hope you get an extra good feeling when you're listening.
And I thank you for commenting on it. I look forward to seeing and meeting him. I do want to go to one of the amazing meetings. I haven't been yet, as I mentioned to you, and perhaps we can get him there again next year.
Oh boy,
that's an expectation we don't want to establish, huh?
Well, it would be hard to imagine a TAM now, an amazing meeting, without Maynard running around. You should have seen him. He had a gold jacket on, and he was in everybody's face. But the reports we've been getting back, and quite frankly, for me, it's been a wonderful thing, because sometimes it's a little bit of a struggle to find content week after week after week after week. But having someone like Maynard just go nuts for 4 or 5 days in Las Vegas means there's plenty of content. But I hope you don't find the accents too baffling.
No, not at all. What I really enjoyed I think in your most recent one, or maybe the second to last podcast, he was interviewing a woman, I think from Virginia.
Yeah, the last one we did, yes.
The last one. And it was so funny because he was really surprised that she knew his name. And he said, "How is that you knew me?" And so you got a name tag on. Blinding glimpse of the obvious, as we say. Yeah. But I would love to meet him sometime. He's a real charming, enthusiastic person.
Enthusiastic is just the word, I think. It really is. Yeah. Well, Glenn, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for helping with the Skeptic Zone. I love doing the show, but of course it certainly means a lot to me to know that the show means more to people.
It does. I said I get 50 or more podcasts. There's really a handful of which I never miss, and yours is one of them. So you've got a really good supporter here in California.
Really appreciate it. From all the way here in beautiful downtown Orinda, as we sip our coffee to help me get over jet lag, Glenn Jackson, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Richard. Thank you for seeing me here.
This is Ben Radford. I'm Deputy Editor of Skeptical Inquirer Science Magazine, author of 6 books, including Tracking Chupacabra, and you can find out more about me at benjaminradford.com.
Thank you for listening to The Skeptic Zone as we reflect upon the passing of 2 of the pioneers in the skeptical organization around the world. But what a legacy. What a legacy both men leave us. Now, you can meet other wonderful people from the skeptical world, including James Randi, DJ Grothy, Rebecca Watson. The list goes on and on. Tickets are still available, not many, for the Australian Skeptics National Convention in Melbourne at the end of November. Don't delay, visit www.vicskeptics.wordpress.com, snap up those last few tickets, and I will see you there, along with Dr. Reggie and Dr. Chrissy Wilson and Lynn Kelly and Adam Van Langenberg and many other people. Now, on next week's show, I catch up with our favourite podcaster, Brian Dunning, who will tell us about his interesting venture to expand Skeptoid, to expand the reach of Skeptoid, his podcast. Can't wait for that. And I might even end up in his hot tub. I might do that. That sounds like a good idea to me. But until next week's show from the San Francisco Bay Area on a beautifully warm, sunny day, this is Richard Saunders signing off.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.